Dean Martin left behind a fortune that makes his family cry. When Dean Martin passed away on Christmas Day 1995, the world mourned the loss of the legendary crooner and comedian. His relaxed charm and seemingly effortless style had defined cool for generations. But behind the image of the carefree entertainer with a drink in his hand and a song on his lips lay one of Hollywood's most surprising financial masterminds. A man who built a fortune so thoughtfully structured and so unexpectedly vast that its full revelation has left his family in tears of astonishment and gratitude. What most people never understood about Dean was how completely different the real man was from his public persona, revealed a longtime business associate who worked with Martin for over 3 decades. The world saw a relaxed, somewhat careless character who acted like success just happened to him. In reality, he was meticulously planning and building a financial empire with extraordinary foresight and discipline. Today we're exploring the remarkable hidden fortune that Dean Martin constructed over his 6-decade career. Assets and investments deliberately concealed from public view and structured with such careful attention to his family's long-term security that their true value and thoughtfulness have only fully emerged in recent years. Most surprising isn't just the size of Martin's estate. It's estimated to significantly exceed initial reports of $30 to $40 million. But the sophisticated strategy behind it. While his Rat Pack contemporaries like Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. lived lavish, often financially turbulent lives, Martin was quietly building wealth through unconventional investments in business, decisions that would continue generating value long after his lifetime. But first, let's examine how the man born Dino Paul Crocetti in Steubenville, Ohio developed a financial philosophy so at odds with his public image, and why the foundations of his fortune remained hidden from public view for so long. You huh? I don't know. Go ahead. You had something else? I have nothing. No, the disciplined man behind the carefree image. Perhaps the greatest performance of Dean Martin's career wasn't in any film or on any stage. It was the decade-long portrayal of himself as a carefree, somewhat careless entertainer who prioritized golf and good times over business matters. This carefully constructed persona concealed a man with extraordinary financial discipline and strategic thinking that began long before his entertainment success. Dean grew up during the Depression in a working-class immigrant community, explained a childhood friend from Steubenville. He watched his parents work incredibly hard for very little security. That experience shaped his entire approach to money. He was determined to build something lasting, not just for himself, but for generations of his family. This determination manifested in financial habits that were wildly inconsistent with his public image. While Martin performed with a drink in hand and projected an air of happy-go-lucky indifference, he was meticulously tracking his earnings, studying investment opportunities, and making remarkably conservative financial choices compared to his Hollywood peers. Dean lived well below his means throughout his entire career, revealed his former accountant. While other stars were buying mansions and fleets of exotic cars, Dean maintained a relatively modest lifestyle. His Beverly Hills home was comfortable but far from extravagant. He drove the same car for years. He wore expensive but not ostentatious clothing. Everything about his actual spending habits reflected discipline rather than indulgence. This discipline extended to his professional decisions as well. Martin famously negotiated contracts that prioritized ownership interests and royalty structures over upfront payments, choices that puzzled industry observers at the time, but created exponentially greater long-term value. In the 1960s, when most stars were focused on salary, Dean was focused on intellectual property rights and residuals, noted an entertainment attorney familiar with his contracts. He would consistently take less money up front in exchange for greater ownership of his work. This approach seemed peculiar to contemporaries who were chasing immediate paydays, but it created a perpetual income stream that continues benefiting his heirs today. Perhaps most revealing of the gap between image and reality was Martin's relationship with alcohol. The perpetually drinking persona that defined his public image was largely an act. While he enjoyed occasional drinks, those close to him reported that he rarely consumed alcohol in the quantities his audience assumed. The drink in his hand during performances was often apple juice, confirmed a longtime member of his production team. Dean understood that his audience expected a certain image, and he delivered it professionally. But when the show was over and business decisions needed to be made, he was clear-headed, focused, and remarkably shrewd. This fundamental contrast between public image and private reality created the perfect cover for Martin to build wealth without scrutiny or expectations. While the entertainment press focused on his performances and perceived lifestyle, he was quietly creating a sophisticated financial portfolio that would ultimately move his family to tears. When its full extent and thoughtfulness were revealed, "Girl," I said, "do you gamble?" She says, "No. I want to be paid right now." The Las Vegas strategy that changed everything. Dean Martin's most financially significant decision, and the one that laid the foundation for his family's lasting security, came in the 1960s with an approach to Las Vegas performing that was considered bizarre by entertainment industry standards but proved visionary in hindsight. Dean essentially invented the modern Las Vegas residency model, but with a twist that seemed crazy at the time, explained a casino executive who worked at the Sands during Martin's performances there. While other stars demanded and received enormous guaranteed payments, Dean negotiated for a much smaller guarantee, plus a significant ownership percentage in the casino itself. Industry people thought he was being taken advantage of, but he understood something fundamental about Las Vegas that others missed. What Martin recognized long before financial analysts and entertainment managers was that the real value in Las Vegas wasn't in entertainment, but in casino operations. And most importantly, the underlying real estate. His contracts with multiple Las Vegas venues included provisions that granted him small but significant ownership stakes in the properties themselves, not just the entertainment venues. These ownership positions initially seemed symbolic, fractions of a percent in operations that were at the time still relatively modest in value, noted a real estate developer familiar with Las Vegas history. But as Vegas transformed from a gambling outpost to a global entertainment destination, those small percentages translated into enormous value, particularly as properties changed hands at increasingly higher valuations. The full genius of this approach became apparent during the massive casino consolidations of the 1980s and 1990s. As original casino properties were acquired by larger corporations, Martin's ownership stakes had to be bought out, often at valuations hundreds of times greater than their original worth. Dean essentially had equity positions in 6 different major Las Vegas properties by the time of his death, revealed a financial advisor familiar with his estate. These interests were structured with incredibly favorable buyout terms that created massive windfalls when ownership changed. One position alone, originally valued at about $150,000 in the 1960s, was ultimately bought out for more than $12 million in the 1990s. This Las Vegas strategy reflected Martin's core financial philosophy: prioritize ownership over income, think in decades rather than years, and identify value that others overlook. While his contemporaries focused on maximizing their guaranteed performance fees, which were spent as quickly as they were earned, Martin was building equity positions that would continue appreciating long after his performances ended. When the family finally understood the complete picture of his Las Vegas holdings and how deliberately he had structured them, it was overwhelming, said a person close to the family. His daughter Deanna actually broke down when she realized that her father had been playing a much longer and more sophisticated financial game than anyone had recognized during his lifetime. This revelation transformed the family's understanding of Martin's legacy from that of a beloved, an entertainer who had left them comfortable, to that of a financial visionary who had created multi-generational security through strategies decades ahead of their time. "Good to see you. How'd all these people get in your room?" The television rights deal that still generates millions. While Dean Martin's musical and film careers brought him fame, his most lucrative business decision centered on his television work, particularly The Dean Martin Show, which ran for 9 seasons from 1965 to 1974, and the Dean Martin celebrity roast specials that followed. The financial structure he created around these programs generates substantial income for his heirs. Even today, more than 5 decades after the shows first aired, Dean negotiated a television deal that was truly unprecedented for its time, explained an entertainment lawyer who specializes in legacy media rights. While most television stars were employees of the networks or production companies, Dean established his own production company, Claude Productions, and maintained ownership of his programs. This structure gave him control of not just his performance, but the underlying